This is going to get deep into the ringleader of the now well-established pedophile ring that involves politicians, bankers, celebrities, foreign nationals, royalty, banks, Russian financiers and banks, um, and a lot of little girls getting hurt. So just want to give you a heads up that we will be talking about things that are uncomfortable. Um, it has to be talked about. It has to be documented. It has to be investigated. It has to be reviewed. I don't think people realize the tsunami of information that has just landed. Spent a lot of time last night going over through the document dump and the emails, and they're everything I expected they were. Because I said years ago that as soon as the whole relationship was brought up and people were still talking to Epstein after he was a convicted sex offender and he was a registrant um, for his criminal past, I said something is being hidden here. There's a whole bunch of activity behind the curtains we're not allowed to see. Well, the curtains got opened up with this data doc and these emails being dumped. Now, I want to put another disclaimer here right up front is just because you're on a list or on a document dump doesn't mean you did something criminal. But what I'm going to point out very early on is Trump and his ilk spent a lot of time pretending they never knew Jeffrey Epstein. They didn't know Ghislaine Maxwell. They didn't know about Epstein Island. They never went to Epstein Island. Okay. All that's been proven false now. False. No, there's not 10% of, well, it could have happened a different way. No, you denied everything now for 10 years. And everything you denied, from knowing him to traveling with him to going to his parties, being around little girls, you denied it all. But it's all coming out as true. Like some of the big rocks that are in this document dump is it's very clear by the language Jeffrey Epstein used himself in the emails. He knew the dirt he had on people, especially Donald J. Trump. He was using that information as leverage, which in the common parlance is blackmail. Okay. Remember, Howard Lutnick on a podcast out of the blue a couple of weeks ago goes, oh, everybody knew Jeffrey Epstein was the biggest blackmailer. And they all tried to walk that back. How can you walk that back? He's in emails saying he's the only one that's got enough dirt so he can destroy Donald Trump. Jeffrey Epstein had the president of the United States on a meat hook as a registrant for being a sex offender. Okay. The president of the United States was compromised. Rena, hello. Thank you for joining. So the president of the United States and the campaigning president, in between his two terms, and the president-elect and now president again, all his aides knew he was compromised by Epstein. The intelligence agencies knew, the lawyers knew, the FBI knew, the bankers knew. No, what's in this data dump? I'm talking tsunami of information. The emails, and trust me, I read 100 emails last night that were so freaking damning, including showing relationships in a triangle between Russia, possibly Russian intelligence or Russian financiers working as agents for Russian intelligence, Epstein and Trump. Because this tranche included emails, not just flight logs. A lot of people are reporting flight logs. No, no, no. There's flight logs, and then there's the flight manifests. The manifests have all the information down to how many pieces of luggage, how much they weighed, how much the passengers weighed, who they are. Because the smaller the aircraft you go, the less margin of error you have for thrust at takeoff. Okay, so when you're within 5% of total load on a small little 12-seater or 16-seaters. I've flown those in the Midwest. Like, I got to get to Chicago and I got to get to Detroit. I got to be in Detroit tonight. Oh, we don't have any seats left on the 747. Do you mind flying a different aircraft? I'm like, man, I was in the Army. I used to love flying in Hueys and Blackhawks and OH-58 helicopters. I absolutely love helicopters. I don't know why. I can't fly them, but I'm actually enamored with you shared my video on Blue Sky. Thank you very much. Yes, and I do appreciate, and I just want to big not just Arena, but a bunch of people who follow or subscribe to my channels on Substack and Blue Sky. That I really appreciate it. My daylight savings time and other topics video just went over 3,000 likes. Thank you very much. I was very flattered. Subscribe, suggest other people subscribe. I really appreciate it. I do not charge for my content. I do have a couple of paid subscribers, and some people who throw me, like a coffee or a beer on PayPal. No payment required. But if you want to support my efforts, I do appreciate it. So thank you for the support and the restacks and the shout outs. I really appreciate it. So this is not just the flight logs. This is the flight manifest records. This is everything on the flight. So, like I said, when you're on those tiny little planes, if you haven't flown on those little guys with the like the Saabs, those are fun. I flew from Chicago to Detroit in a thunderstorm in one of them. Really fun. It didn't bother me. I mean, we bounced around a lot, but again, I was on so many Army helicopters, and I always thought those were a blast. The turbulence on the small plane doesn't bug me. Turbulence on big planes, I don't like. The little planes, it doesn't bother me. I don't know why. So, anyways, so you have the flight manifests. You have just everybody that's ever been talked about in relationship to Epstein. There's a frickin' email with Epstein talking to him. So all these people, not just including Trump, oh, I didn't know him, or I barely know him. Oh, I was just on this fundraising committee, or tangentially, there was some shell company I owned that was doing some business with him. Oh, it was all tangential. Bullshit. They had direct contact with the guy. Okay. And there are thousands of emails that prove it. Politicians, CEO, foreign heads of state, billionaires, scientists, global policy elite, Russians, and more Russians. And what I'm going to talk about today is I'm not making any claims of anybody's guilt. That's for a court to do. You're not guilty until an Article 3 judge says so. I'm not an Article 3 judge, so I can't determine guilt. Okay. What I'm going to talk about is you certainly look guilty. And because you look so guilty, and you will probably end up in court one day over this shit, this is politically radioactive. Like, I almost called today's live video MAGA's Wake. Yeah, it's the day before the funeral. That's what I'm saying. Now, I'm not saying they're going to die tomorrow morning, but I'm saying MAGA as we've been seeing for the last decade, that's over by Christmas. And I'll show you several examples on how several far right-wing conservative, theocratic nationalist vectors have all cross-mingled, and this is going to blow up in their face. And I'm going to show you a recent history in the world that probably tells us where we're going next. Okay? So what I'm talking about today is, yeah, you look guilty. I'm not saying anybody's guilty, but I'm definitely saying as a fact that this is so politically radioactive that a lot of people are done. Do you know why moron Taylor Greene switched back to being Marjorie Taylor Greene? She almost sounds lucid now, right? She knew it was in these files. That's why she's changed her tone. The files are so bad, and Epstein is up everybody's ass in the whole blackmail and inconvenient. Like, why didn't people catch on earlier? This is something I'm like gobstopped by. Okay, you had teenage girls giving massages to adult men. One, gross. Okay, I prefer MILFs. Okay, always have, by the way. What the hell is a 15-year-old giving a massage to a 40-year-old man for? Okay, that in itself is not only disgusting, it's probably some child labor shit you need to get into on the criminal side. Okay, you're putting that child in a situation the child should never be in as a laborer. You're going to put a 15-year-old girl in a closed room on a massage table with an adult male, and that didn't spark your interest or your suspicion. That's fucking horrible. And I'll get into this later on about the whole morals of a society. Again, there's a big recent news tie-in to this in another country I want to talk about. We'll get there. Now, who is this terrifying? Who is this document dump terrifying? Everybody that was a January 6th conspirator, and you're in the House or the Senate. Okay. Because remember, it's not just the Epstein files. You got the Jack Smith report that's going to drop here soon. And again, just like the Epstein files, if you think there's just one copy, you'd be wrong. Okay. Prince Andrew got fired and became Andrew Windsor Mountbatten again because King Charles, Chucky, saw MI6's copy or their part that they had, their set of information they had. That's why Prince Andrew got fired. That's my educated opinion. Okay, he wasn't sent back to being a Mountbatten for being suspected of doing evil shit. Charles knew he did evil shit. Okay, and that was the clue. Charles firing Andrew over this shit. I said the day that happened, the day the news was going to happen, I saw it the night before that he was being called in the next morning, and it was over. Princess Anne tried to intervene, no good. Chuck had it with Andrew. Andrew getting fired for cause, for which he did. They even fired Fergie. They kicked her out of Freedom House. Okay? Charles is not only mad at Andrew, he's also mad at Fergie. Okay? Because she's a co-conspirator in this. She's part of the cover-up. Okay? So, how did you not know when the news of what was going to go down between Charles and Andrew over in England, how did you know that the cat wasn't coming out of the bag? Because as of this data dump, the cat is 100% out of the bag. Epstein was a pedophile. He was a ringleader in a pedophile organization. He was running an Amway-style MLM with little girls for the purposes of sexual trafficking and rape. He was literally, and this was well known within the circles, Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell were paying girls to go find other girls to be victims. That is a market that is criminalizing a multi-level marketing scheme. They literally turned child sex trafficking into a pyramid scheme. That's how dastardly of a situation we're talking about. And then entire apparatuses, and not just the American upper crust of society and government and politics and banking, but in other countries as well. Okay. Because if you think Andrew's the last guy to catch one in the fucking upside the head from King Charles, because I think King Charles is genuinely pissed off. Okay. I had no suspicions whatsoever that Charles he loves his wives. Okay, he's the MILF guy. Andrew, he's the little girl guy, and Chuck just came to terms with that, so he's gone. Okay, now what this is about to change we're in, we're approaching another post-crisis moment. The last moment we went through this is when Barry Goldwater, I talked about this before, Barry Goldwater and a delegation walked over from Capitol Hill, went to the residence to go visit with Nixon, sat across the couch from him, and said, "Hey, Mr. President, you no longer have my support. Either you get the fuck out or you'll be impeached by tomorrow afternoon. See ya." The delegation left. Noon the next day, Nixon resigned. Okay. That once Nixon resigned, we were in a whole recovery period, the post Watergate fix period. We're going to go into a post Trumpianism fix period. Okay. Because this is going to reshape everything. This is going to reshape the congressional hearings, the congressional lead up to the midterms, the election in the midterms, the way people vote in the midterms, presidential politics of the next election. Trump thinks he's getting a third term. He may be getting another conviction, another presidential term. That's over. As of last night, that is an impossibility. I put the chance of him getting reelected, even by a strong coup effort, a continuing coup effort, I put his chances of being president in the third term. I only had it at about 0.1% because he was just blustering. I don't think he would actually able to pull that off. But now it's an official 0%. He has 0% chance of continuing his political career or anybody around his orbit continuing their political or legal careers. Okay? Because politicians are in trouble, diplomats are in trouble, media personalities are in trouble, including journalists. Judges who went along with corrupt lawyers. Can anybody explain this to me? How Ken Starr, you remember the guy who was the special prosecutor in the Whitewater investigation against the Clintons, where he spent like millions and millions and millions of dollars to try to find that the Clintons were dirty in a real estate deal, and the only evidence he had is he caught the person who actually did it and then tried to offer that third party a deal to blame it all on the Clintons, and then he would give her full relief of her sentence. And she was like, "Fuck you, I'm not doing that." Okay, that Ken Starr. That Ken Starr was the guy who was in constant communication with Jeffrey Epstein, according to the emails, up to and including his legal problems, up to including getting him that sweetheart deal that didn't convict him as a sex trafficker the first time. Ken fucking Starr, Whitewater special prosecutor. Okay. Oh, and you want to see a fun video? Look this up after we get done here. Look up the Steve Bannon video. It's all over Blue Sky, where he's doing a town hall and he's doing remotes on the street, like the man on the street thing, like with Letterman. And this trader looks like New York. Seeing this guy's in a real good suit, so I'm assuming he's a trader or some business guy. Just the way he was dressed. And yeah, he was like, "Oh yeah, I used to be all 100% Trump, but you motherfuckers are the pedophile protectors. You're the deep state. You're the assholes." And Steve Bannon's like, "Oh, I lost control." Yeah, you did. You lost control because your entire political gadfly life has been setting up a criminal who's a criminal in multiple ways, including being a sex trafficking pedophile by current information, at least by the political level. You're associated with pedophile trafficking. Good. I'm not making a statement on anybody's guilt or innocence. That's for a jury and a judge to decide. But I'm saying what's out there, what can be reasonably inferred. You look, dude, guilty as fuck. There's guilty, and then there's guilty as fuck. Okay, like I was going through the FBI information on the DNA evidence and the crime scene collection about the shooter, Charlie Kirk shooter, the murderer. He's being booked for aggravated murder, a whole bunch of other charges, including interfering with witnesses and tampering with evidence and all. Even if he doesn't get the death penalty, he's going to get like 194 years in prison. And they have him dead to rights because his biological and DNA evidence is going to get everywhere. And um, um, Yeah, the newspapers like the Independent have coined the dump and the flight manifests, the flight records, as the Lolita Express. That's nasty and that's disgusting. Um, and it's funny, like all these guys are anti-porn, and I actually looked this up. There's actually a data scientist that works at Pornhub, and he's released data before. And I looked up some of the news articles on the annual data report from the pornography companies. I should say pornography corporations. People don't realize that these are sometimes private equity and publicly, they're shell companies of publicly traded corporations. They're mainstream companies, dude. um, America really likes its MILFs and its lesbians. Okay. Especially down, I think it was Mississippi, they're black lesbians, really into that. And since men are the majority consumers of pornography, um, yeah, this whole anti-porn angst at the same time they're doing gross shit with little girls, and it's like at the top of the list in a lot of the viewership studies, the whole MILF thing is big. And you look at some of the biggest money makers in porn, um, that have done crossover to mainstream, um, like Lisa Ann. That is a mom-bodied 50-year-old MILF, and she's one of the biggest porn stars in the universe. They want to block the MILF porn while they defend child rape. If anybody figures that one out, let me know, because that's really disgusting and weird. I'm going through my litany of research and notes here. Um, yeah, when we're talking about flight manifest, I mean everything: the luggage, the plane number, the people's names, everything. Everything about the flight, including where the person sat in the cabin. Okay, this is not like a 30,000-foot level information drop. This is the details. Okay, a lot of these were found in discovery in the civil lawsuits involving the victims, by the way. And this isn't vibes. This isn't feels, or feels with a Z. Feels. Um, this is the shit that's now in writing, in public, as part of a published archive. There's no hiding this anymore. The cat is not in the bag, as I said before. Um, and what's amazing is it is well known early on that a lot of the accusations that are now proving out in the public space to have a lot of truth behind them, um, they all point to a RICO, a racketeering organization. Now, we love RICO. We love to charge people with RICO. Hell, Trump wants to charge Antifa and political parties that don't agree with him with RICO. Okay? But those aren't RICOs. Those aren't racketeering organizations. Okay? Epstein's pedophile ring and all his buddies is the exact definition of a RICO. This was organized crime run as an MLM, and the product were child victims. And people knew that years ago. Years ago. Like before he came down the escalator years ago. And some of the exchanges that Epstein had with other people, talking directly about who knew about the girls. Okay. And talking about who won't talk Trump because he knows there's so much dirt on him. To say this dump sheds light to the situation is such an understatement. This is a political tsunami that is going to destroy not just dear leader porn star Humper, the child rapist, who's accused repeatedly in these docs. Um, Now, this is the interesting. This is the really interesting. The retort, and I've had this people say this in my YouTube comments on Blue Sky. That I've been hit with this several times. Oh, aren't you going to be all upset and crying tears when the Clintons and Gore are on the list too? Now, if you've been watching me for any time, you realize I do not like the Clintons. Okay. I don't like or dislike Gore. He is what he is. I think he's a little bit of a blowhard and oversteps his place in the universe on a regular basis, but I don't like the Clintons. Never have. Okay. But guess what is revealed when you read through this email tranche and the documents? The Clintons aren't in there. Not once. How many times is Gore in there? Zero. Oh, and there's an email authored by Jeffrey Epstein that says, hey, I never met Gore. He says, I never met the guy. Okay. If he never met Gore, how was Gore on Epstein Island? Because he wasn't. There's no indication of that whatsoever. Okay. Remember, you made the whole pizza comet pizza thing up. Hillary was the king of the pedos. All projection. They knew when they created the Comet Pizza propaganda, they already knew about Epstein and his circle of friends, his circle of co-conspirators and a pedophilia ring. They already knew about that when they started the Comet Pizza. And then, funny, they don't blame Bill, they blame Hillary because she's the political threat against Donald Trump. Bill can't run again. So they instead of actually accusing a well-known degenerate of even more bad behavior, they went after this and just concocted it as an empty political attack. Okay. But when you go through this data, the Clintons are not in Epstein Island, at his house, at his parties, or on the massage table. Okay. Your whole, oh, you'll cry too. And I love how the fact is, if I criticize Trump, because I've hated the motherfucker since the 80s, he's a bad man. He's always been a bad person. Okay. Every asshole on YouTube immediately identifies me as a liberal Democrat. Again, if you've been watching me for any time, you know I'm not a liberal and I'm not a Democrat. I'm an independent, nonpartisan independent. And I'm a center-left libertarian. Classic liberal, sure, but not today's Democrat. No, no. But according to YouTube, if I don't like Trump or I call him out factually on the problems he's causing and the bad policies he's implementing, I am automatically a liberal Democrat. I just think that's funny. Yeah, now this is where, and they already tried to drive around this little obstacle with the data dump. They're claiming that this is some rando dump. How do we know if any of this is even true? Anything to drive around that obstacle called pedophilia, the new data doc, and this is the House Oversight Committee website. Just go to the House Oversight and look at the article, and they give you all the links. Most of this information comes from a congressional subpoena. Okay. Well, how do you even know any of this is true? I don't know. Because it came from lawsuits from the victims. And when they tried to hide the data, Congress subpoenaed it and then they released it. That's the way we know it's true. Lawyers and judges and Congress have already been through this shit. The cat isn't out of the bag. The cat has clawed its way through the bag, shredded the bag, and killed two people in the room. At least politically. And the thing is, so many powerful people in our society already knew who Epstein was, already knew who Trump was 10 years ago, longer than 10 years ago. Completely supported him anyways. Stayed in contact with Jeffrey Epstein when he was a registrant on the sex offender program. They're emailing him like he's one of the boys. Literally just got out of jail for child sex offenses. Didn't stop many of them from talking to him, dealing with him, doing business with him, continuing their extracurricular activities with him. Okay. Remember when they told you the poors and the immigrants and the brown, they cause all the crime? Again, another projection. The people on top are literally running a mafia. I've been telling you it's been a street gang. I've been telling you that for the 2.5 years I've been on this platform. You're dealing with a street gang. A street gang who has a side hobby, apparently, of raping women, which is common in gangs, by the way, especially the biker gangs. They'll rape their own women. Yeah. You like raping the women and molesting the little girls. But you're better than us. The problem is somebody else. Blame shift, blame shift, blame shift, blame shift. All we've lived through for the past 10 years. It's always somebody else's fault, not the pedo ring's fault. Not the assholes taking payments from the Russians' fault. Yeah, remember, I talked about Ken Starr at the beginning of this, but Ken Starr investigated Bill Clinton from getting a blowjob from an adult woman where there's no evidence there wasn't consent. In fact, when you listen to Monica, it sounds like she wanted to blow the president. That was like one of her goals about working there. Okay? Okay? Clinton got a blowjob, then lied about it. Now, personally, I'd have said, yeah, I got a blowjob. It was great. Totally relaxed me. I ended up working 5 more hours that night for the win. And then walk off from the lectern singing God Bless America. That's what Clinton should have done. But of course, like Trump, he's going to lie his fucking ass off and get caught. Okay? Clinton tried to lie so hard, he tried to tell us as a Rhodes Scholar who went to Oxford University, he didn't know what the most common verb in the English language meant. Can you define is? Can you stop being a lying asshole and a degenerate? Yeah, but Ken Starr investigated Bill Clinton about lying about a blowjob where there's no children involved, no consent issues involved. There was just a stain on a dress. But the entire legal, political, banking, finance, diplomatic, foreign relations ecosystem, the top crust of our society, is literally involved in a pedo ring led by who Howard Lutnick said was the biggest blackmailer in the universe, and everybody knew that. But getting a blowjob from an adult woman was the problem. You know the blowjob? I never cared about that. Now, I cared more about him feeling up other women, and I know about those stories, including from a personal friend in Washington, D.C. I was a lot more concerned with Bill Clinton about the handsy, gropey stuff he was known for. But never once did it involve children. Ken Starr is the one that got the sweetheart deal, the non-prosecution deal, where Epstein just pled guilty to a minor subset offense, registered for a couple of years as a sex offender, and then Ali Oxenfree, he was allowed to go back and then continue to rape little girls. Ken Starr helped facilitate that. Ken Starr, the guy who went after Bill Clinton, wrongfully, even though I don't like Bill Clinton, I think Ken Starr's appointment and his investigation of the Clintons was pure bullshit. Um, Julie K. Brown of the Miami Herald um, did extensive reporting on Ken Starr's involvement with Jeffrey Epstein. Not only is he the guy who got the sweetheart deal, reporter Ms. Brown characterized him as a quote unquote fixer. Okay. Now, fixers exist at all different levels of society. Um, well, the character Mike on Breaking Bad, that's a fixer. Guy that cleans up your messes. Okay. That was Ken Starr's job in the political rich guys club at the top of our society. Um, and the whole thing was we had to go after Bill Clinton because this was a moral issue. The moral majority have spoken. Really? Really? The preachers and the pedophile and the churches want people to be held to a higher moral standard? Really? Every religious sect. No, Catholic Church by far the worst, but the Jews have gone through it. Hare Krishna went through it in Texas. The Hare Krishna tried to confess their sins, got totally raked over the coals. They took their own investigation they paid for by a third party. They did the whole independent third party investigation thing. They went, oh, this is a problem. Talking about the Hare Krishnas in Texas. Whoops, sorry, we'll figure this out. We'll figure out how this done. Discovery, they subpoena the third party report they use it against the Krishna temple, and they rake them over the coals in civil court, even when no the religious organization itself didn't try to cover up. They try to do their own exposure and correction. So every sect has been through this. And but who has really been on top of this lately? Watch Right Wing Watch and a couple of those other social media pages. Hardcore Christians are getting arrested left, right, and center for sexually abusing women and children. Okay. Zachary Ratcliffe, the guy that played the guitar and was so happy and he loved Trump. He had to sing a song about him at CPAC. Okay. At CPAC, run by the guy who chases twinks around in bars. So Zachary Ratcliffe was playing at the Twink Hunters confab. And then when he gets back home, he's arrested for sexual offenses with children. That guy Lauder in Georgia, who was the state chairman or the state secretary of state's main guy politically in a big fundraiser in Georgia, he comes back from a confab. He gets arrested for 2 counts of sexual torture plus dozens of other offenses. He's facing 2 life sentences, 2 automatic life sentences, plus like 210 years in prison. Okay, there's literally a fucking crime wave with the far right, the politicized Christian theocratic nationalist side of our political ecosystem and our societal ecosystem. It is a full frickin' blown crime wave. And it goes straight to the top. The guy who's saying he's the best Christian there ever was, Donald Trump. And you Christians believed him. You believed him. You were dumb enough to believe this criminal con artist. After you knew about the sexual offenses with adult women, you gave him a free pass on the pedophilia, the child rape, which is sticking all over him now because of this data dump. If he ends up in court, it ain't going to be pretty. Yeah, it seems like some of the victims who said Clinton was there, there's no evidence there. He's not in the flight manifest. He's not in the emails. And again, Gore, I never met the guy. So this is starting to stick very one-sided in the left-right orthodoxy. The right's taking it. The stickies are all hitting the right wing right now. And remember, for 10 years, they played this as Epstein was a one-off pervert who did this for his own jollies, his own sick jollies. Okay, that's not even remotely true. This was a network of child rapists, and it was well known years ago. ABC News reported even when Ken Starr was trying to sign off on that sweetheart deal, people who were complaining is you're literally under sentencing somebody who's a massive criminal problem. People were objecting in real time to the sweetheart deal in Florida, but they got overruled. He got the sweetheart deal. He was in and out of prison in a few months, even though he was a ringleader in a massive international pedophile ring. And again, that reporter from the Miami Herald, this is why I think the Miami Herald's got a big chunk of the Epstein file, if not the whole bailiwick. Brown was literally there waving the damn preliminary information and going, how the hell can you be giving this guy a sweetheart deal? Then they went through the whole year of, we don't know him. Remember that? So the corruption and the bullshit layers deep here. All the screeching on the 5 on Fox News. Oh my God, Clinton was on the island 28 times. How can you just be pointing at Trump? The data doc does any activity by the degenerate Bill Clinton. He may be guilty of a whole bunch, or at least in Hillary's mind, he may be guilty of a whole bunch of shit. Not this. There's no evidence. There's zero evidence now. But you spent all this time, including not just on social media, but including on the cable TV news, going, well, he was there, he was there, he was there. It's this guy. It was everybody. So, if you're saying Trump did this, then your guy did it. Okay. You just pointed fingers, you did the blame shifting, and it didn't work. Now, what's going to be interesting is this is the whole huge arc we've been riding since the Reagan years. This shit of moral superiority by assholes, including assholes that are sex offenders. This started way back with assholes in the moral majority. This is Franklin Graham. This is fucking Falwell. Jim Baker, the rapist. You know how they try to rehabilitate him online and on cable TV news, on right-wing cable TV news? He had to give up control of his church for a while because the woke came after him. Okay, one, woke didn't exist in the 1980s, you fucking morons. Second of all, he went to federal prison for raping Jessica Hahn. He didn't take a temporary leave of absence. He was in federal fucking prison for rape. Go read my essay about the right-wing rape culture. Jim Baker getting perp walked out of his house in handcuffs. That's the photo for that essay. So this is the whole 40 years coming round full circle. Okay, we start off with these pious pricks trying to cover their asses for what happened in the 70s with Nixon. Okay. Oh no, we're the moralists. We're the good Christians that are here to protect you. And then you gave us Reagan. Okay. To date, excluding the Trump administration, the most criminal administration we ever saw in the United States. Hundreds of people indicted. The moralists, like Jim Baker. Jim Baker went to prison for rape. Falwell tried to go to the Supreme Court and have comedy outlawed. Okay. Why I'm bringing all this whole history up? None of this is fucking new. I've been trying to explain this. Trump has not thought of a single original thing in his goddamn life. He's an idiot who just looks at things and goes, oh, I guess repeat that. I'll sound smart. You see his one-handed clap today? I'm like, man, this guy is just going to stroke out right there at the lectern. because he's becoming debilitated before our eyes. And all this moralist shit coming from Trump and J.D. Vance. And now they're trying counter moralism. This is another video you should go find. Go find Megyn Kelly's podcast this morning, where she thought it was okay if they had sex with 13 and 14-year-old girls because they weren't 9. I'm like, what? What? Oh, and there's been a history of this. Just like the moral majority goes all the way back to the 80s, the whole evangelical getting caught up. I talked about that a few minutes ago, all caught up in all the sex offenses. The church that Jamie Langford, Senator Jamie Langford, was in, he was deposed in a church sexual assault case. And he said that a 13-year-old child, could consent to sex. Not even under Oklahoma state law is that true. A 14-year-old can consent to a 17-year-old. A 15-year-old can consent up to an 18-year-old. There's a 3-year gap window under Oklahoma law till you're an adult. Okay. Because they wanted to stop putting the people in prison because an 18-year-old had sex with a 17-year-old. Okay. They're only like 7 months apart, and you put the boy in prison, the young man in prison for rape, for child molestation. And even Oklahoma figured out that's probably not real life. So they gave the 3-year window. Okay. But nowhere in anybody's state law and under federal law, or any court precedent or military law, at least I'm aware of, you can be an adult male and have sex with a 13-year-old. 14 is the youngest you can be in consenting with, and that's only if you're with a 17-year-old or less. So they don't prosecute young kids having sex early, especially when both of them are consenting. Okay. There's no way you can justify a 22-year-old, 24-year-old man having sex with a 13-year-old. Senator Langford said that was okay. So we're not talking about just Trump. We're not just talking about Megyn Kelly being the Nazi princess supporting her Nazi little daddy. Okay. We're talking about a structural problem within the religious community, especially with the right wingers of the religious community, regardless of sect. Okay, that's why there's no Christian voting bloc. That's a Lee Atwater lie he came up with in 1978. The sects don't like each other. Do you really think the hard right-wing evangelical like the left-wing universalists or even the Catholics, even if they're right-wing? No, the evangelical politically like Opus Dei, the wacko far-right Catholics. But that's only for political purposes. Okay? If you're an evangelical, the school of thought are Catholics are heathens. Okay? They don't consider them Christian. Evangelicals do not consider Catholics Christians. Okay? So is there a Christian voting bloc in America? Bullshit. It's a political concocted so they can play this Christian card in the election periods, and then when they get into office, does Christianity matter? No. No food stamps. No assisting the poor. Abandoning the elderly. Creating elderly poverty in our seniors. Taking away health care, just like Jesus would do. I don't know what book you read. I'm an atheist. I actually read the Bible, read parts of the Torah, read parts of the Quran. Okay, it's literature. Of course, read it. Okay, but I didn't take the Bible that seriously, the same way I didn't take the Star Trek books or the Dune books that seriously. They're just books. They're literature. They're not in the facts section of the library or the bookstore. Okay, it's just mythology and literature. That's all it is. But you posted yourself on a pillar telling us that you were better people than the rest of us because you're followers of Jesus Christ. No, you're not. Same way the Catholic Church doesn't give a shit about Jesus. Remember, I told you early on I was going to tell you an example of this may be a massive turning point in American history. Very recently in world history, one country, Ireland, went from being one of the most religious countries on earth, mostly Catholic and Protestant, mostly Catholic and Protestant, to being almost a completely agnostic state, if not atheist, moving toward an atheist state in a matter of just a few years. What happened? Well, finally, the reports about the evil shit that the Catholic Church had been doing in Ireland, running those homes for the 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 women who got and the girls who got pregnant too early in life, um, and then the Irish investigators and the Irish government in the inquiry found mass graves of babies and women at these tombs. I don't know how you say it in Irish. I am Irish, of Irish descent. I can't speak Irish or Gaelic. Um, but at these homes, they found horror stories that were worse than any Saw movie or like you ever watched. The Catholic Church was practicing serial killers. Was a practicing serial killer in Ireland, all under the guise that they're working in the name of the Lord. So they killed women and babies, dead babies at the bottom of the wells. That's what we're talking about. Okay, when that report hit, the entire society of Ireland changed. Like, this isn't within the last like 10, 12 years. This is not like back in the 1970s. This is like recently. Okay. They don't give a shit about the Catholic Church anymore. Literally do not care. Like, totally reform their government so the Catholic Church doesn't have a say in what the fuck goes on anymore. That's how much horrible criminals, what a horrible criminal organization the church itself was in Ireland. This may prove out what the churches are in America. We may see a whole change. Like, religion is already falling in America quite at a rapid pace. More people identify as agnostic or atheist than they ever have before. People are running for political office openly as atheists, as people run openly as gay. And people that are atheists have a harder time getting elected. The first outed atheist who outed himself was Ken Starr. Not Ken Starr. That was the prosecutor. It was Pete Stark in California, Central Coast. Yeah, he admitted he was an atheist, didn't believe, was always a non-believer. You know, I thought he was a good representative. I voted for him, even though he was a Democrat. Thought he was a good guy. I actually met him several times. Thought he was a nice, intelligent man. Okay. I actually had a couple of whiskeys with Jerry Brown when he was mayor of Oakland. What a smart guy. Not a guy I agree with everything about, but I gotta tell you, is he competent? Is he knowledgeable? Is he intelligent? Yes, yes, and yes. That man has a steel trap for a mind. He's a very smart individual. Okay. Had a fun evening at that party. It's around Christmas time. So yeah, I voted for people from both parties. You have to, because that's all we got, unless you got the random independent or a green who isn't crazy or a libertarian who isn't completely off their rocker. Yeah, I'm a groovy libertarian. I do not like the Libertarian Party, not at all. I don't like any political party at all. That's why I'm a nonpartisan independent. I will think for myself. It's a Gen X thing. We heard information as kids. We went, oh, okay, that's interesting. Let me put that into the computer banks. Let's put it in the bailiwick and, add that to what I know and then think about it and come up with my own decision. That's why, like a lot of people when I was growing up in the 70s in New England, it was a live and let live place. Even though it was really religious, okay, it was live and let live. Nobody give a shit. Nobody did what they were doing today in this hostile, keep up with the Jones political religious mania. That just didn't happen when I was a kid. Um, oh, let me point this out. In 2007, when you actually look at the court docs, and this was reported, this is actually documented in the 11th Circuit's website. When you look at what the attorney's office said, this is the Southern District of Florida, this is the federal attorneys. You look at what they said in that paperwork and in those filings, they said they wouldn't prosecute Epstein or his co-conspirators. They already knew it wasn't a sole suspect. This was a criminal organization. This is, I said, well before he came down the fucking escalator. This was 2007. The Southern District of Florida completely understood what they were dealing with. 2007. 18 years ago. You can tell I'm a little pissed by this case. I used to investigate these type of cases, both in the Army and as a civilian cop. I was very good at sex crimes, very proud of my reports. I told you my rape investigation in the city park that stayed in the training book for 15 years after I retired. It was a damn good report. All my reports were damn good reports. I knew how to write a report. Very fluent in English, so I was a very good report writer. You can't mention in legal documents coming out of a federal district prosecutor's office. You can't talk about we don't know about we don't know about multiple actors when you said you're not going to prosecute him or his co-conspirators under this deal. So who did Jeffrey Epstein have dirt on? Was it Ken Starr? Was it somebody in the Southern District's office? Was it somebody in the DOJ? Was it a politician in Florida? I have no clue. But he had dirt on somebody, and he got this worked through. And who worked it for him? Ken fucking Starr. Mr. Whitewater himself. The Utah Legal Digital Digest has a whole record of this. In some of the documents, the phrase sex trafficking organization is used. Again, how is this a sole actor? Because remember, the sole actor, they pushed that forward to just a couple of months ago. Ghislaine Maxwell is only in prison for trafficking girls to Jeffrey Epstein. Nobody else. That's a reboot of the bad plea deal from 2007. This is how long they've been playing this game. The moralist game they've been playing since 1978. Into the 80 election when we got Reagan. This whole cover up the pedo ring, they've been playing this game for 18 years, according to these documents. You call it a sex trafficking organization, but you also say you won't prosecute the organization who committed the crimes because you're cutting a sweet deal with politically and wealth-connected Epstein. And then you repeat that with Maxwell years later. Oh, she just trafficked girls to him. No, it was an MLM, a multiple level marketing scheme. The victims were paid to go find other victims. You can call it an MLM, or you can call it a RICO. Both are applicable. If true, both are applicable. Okay, when the Southern District of New York filed charges against him in 2019, they listed this clearly as a conspiracy, not as a sole actor. But again, how did they just 2 months ago when Todd Blanche, now here's an accessory after the fact, Todd Blanche, Trump's former personal attorney, who went and interviewed the co-ringleader of a gigantic international pedophilia ring, a sex trafficking ring, a child rape ring. He goes to her prison, interviews her, fully knowing what these documents and emails say, and interviews her to come up with an entirely new narrative. How she didn't know anybody. How could she not know Donald Trump when Donald Trump, according to Yahoo News, is in the Epstein document dumps and emails about 1,500 times? Not once, not twice, not 10, not a baker's dozen, not 100 times. 1,500 times he's in the damn. I never knew him. They didn't know Trump. Trump didn't know them. How convenient. If you didn't know about him, why did you fucking talk about him and have interest of him 1,500 times? Going back to the Miami Herald, according to Palm Beach Police Department, knew there was more than one suspect involved in the very earliest parts of the original investigation. Put that into your information, process it, come to your own conclusions. And of course, the reporter Brown from the Miami Herald in 2018, long time ago still, wrote the Perversion of Justice series that publicly laid out a ring-like structure, recruitment, grooming, multiple locations, multiple states, enablers and fixers, all working in a criminal conspiracy to create a pyramid scheme where the product, again, was little girls to be raped. Now, going back to Maxwell for a second, if Maxwell didn't do anything that she was convicted of, why is she in prison? You want to go there? Greg Gutfeld, Megyn Kelly, Kevin O'Leary, and Piers Morgan, the ultimate Elon Musk and Trump defenders. Yeah, they hold Elon Musk in high regard. The guy with 13 baby mamas and 4 of them are suing him because he's a deadbeat dad. Oh, yeah, such a moralist. I can see how he fits in with Jerry Falwell. Now, this is an opinion, but it's a strong opinion, and I think it's backed up by a lot of the information that I just read, is if you were a journalist or you were a cop or a lawyer, so journalistically or legally, at the very initial parts of this shit almost 20 years ago in Palm Beach, they knew what they were dealing with. They knew they were accomplices. They knew it was a conspiracy. Everybody frickin' knew. How bad was the plea deal for the Palm Beach conviction for Epstein? The deal was so dirty, the federal prosecutor never briefed the victims before they handed out the deal. That's a no-go at any level of a prosecutor, DA, local DA to a federal prosecutor. That's a no-go. You just don't do things in absent of the view of the victims. That's not how it's done. So if they didn't tell the victims they're going to let this guy walk with a couple of months and a slap on the hand, okay, again, dirty as fuck. The DOJ watchdog wrote this all off as poor judgment by Acosta, the federal prosecutor from the Southern District of Florida. Not true. We now know it wasn't just poor judgment. Fixers were involved, co-conspirator, blackmail, all this, put it all together. This wasn't poor judgment. This was manipulation to protect a politically and wealth-connected suspect and to provide him one of the worst examples of the misdelivery of the administration of justice. Because they know what they had early on. We're talking the early aughts. They knew they were dealing with a criminal structure. Okay. They were creating their own business, including criminal payments. You were paying girls to go find victims that would soon be rape victims. Talk about a forethought. Talk about knowing what you knew when you knew it and what motivations you were acting on. There was money, there was logistics, there were locations, there was travel. There were funneled, structured payments. Okay. Government loves to charge people with structuring their money payments because that's illegal. But when you structure payments through the victims to other victims, the federal prosecutors in 2 districts decided to go, meh, he's a fund to Trump and some Russian bankers. And I guess he has some connection to the CIA or Mossad, which I think is bullshit. But okay, we'll believe it. Ali oxen free, no problem. He gets to do whatever he wants. Okay, you didn't have just the island. And again, they knew this shit early. It wasn't just the island. It was Palm Beach, Florida, New York City, New York, and a town in New Mexico. At minimum, they knew this was interstate. What pisses off the FBI? How do you get the FBI crawling down your back? You do shit in one state and you transport your shit to another state. You make your crimes cross state borders. That's what pisses off the federal DOJ. Sure than shit, you're going to have the FBI special agents crawling up your ass. You try to go across state lines with your criminal gang shit. They knew all of this. This is what this doc and these emails are showing. None of this was mystery. There was no Scooby-Doo mystery to solve here. They knew this shit back in 2010, 2012, 2018. They knew this before Trump came down the fucking escalator. The intelligence agency knew. The bankers knew. The bankers are involved. Can you tell me how the FinCEN, the money laundering flagging system, flagged $1.48 billion worth of transactions as money laundering involving Trump and Epstein and other parties, and then nothing happens whatsoever? $1.5 million in flagged money laundering. Again, Ali Oxenfree, no problem. Nothing to see here. Move along. So everybody in Washington, D.C., New York, Florida districts, they didn't give a shit. Everybody was the chief of police in South Park. Move along. Nothing to see here. And it wasn't just the child victims recruiting other victims. They were doing it while being controlled by the ringleaders. This was coercion to commit felonies against minors. That alone should put you in jail for 50 fucking years. Never mind the illegal sexual behavior. And fuck you, Megyn Kelly, you Nazi fucking whore. A child, 12 years old, whether they pass puberty or not, cannot consent to sexual activity. It is not just a crime when they're older than 9. You sick, sick bitch. I almost threw something at the TV when I was eating my enchilada for lunch. I had enchilada leftovers. It was so good. Homemade. So good. I almost threw my plate at the TV when I saw that clip. Pissed me off. Still pissing me off. You're making excuses for grown men having sex with 13-year-olds? What the heck? What the fuck is wrong with you? How black is your heart? You want to talk? You're the moralist better than us, and you don't even have a soul? The fuck out of here. Now, if this was a street gang, like the shit we did in the 80s and 90s, Once you're dealing with multiple conspirators, that's when you get task force sicked on your ass. That's when people start working together. Local police, sheriff's department, Army CID, FBI, U.S. Marshals, IRS. Man, I've been on search warrants against big drug trafficking targets. We brought everybody. We bought the Treasury. We bought the IRS. We bought the Secret Service. Anything we can find on you on top of the drug trafficking, ATF. ATF was always out there with us if we knew or suspected there was illegal guns involved. We're not going to do the illegal gun charges locally. We're going to immediately hand that to the ATF to do them federally because there's an automatic 5-year sentence. Okay, so we catch you with the 3 pounds of dope and the cash and the illegal Cobras and the stolen M16, you get burned for the stolen M16. You get burned for that twice. You get charged for stealing it under state law. The illegal weapons possession of an automatic weapon with an automatic 5-year sentence. Yeah, the ATF's going to do you on that one, and we'll happily sign over that case. That's why we're running as a task force. So whatever the case goes, once we have the evidence, we can hand it to the best player to prosecute. Okay. If this was a bunch of black or brown young men in the 1980s dealing crack, stealing cars, doing drive-bys, okay, running stolen vehicle operations, all the way up to major chop shops, stolen car ringleaders, that sort of stuff. Yeah, we'd have RICO'd the shit out of them. A bunch of rich white boys and politicians start doing it. Nobody cares. Just sweep it underneath the rug. We can just make it all go away. Somebody call Ken Starr. He's a fixer. Because here's the thing about federal law. Even if they haven't identified yet your co-conspirators, you can still be charged in the conspiracy. They'll just list them out as unnamed suspect 1, unnamed suspect 2, unnamed suspect 22. Boom, you still get charged. These guys, again, they just walked. One of the mantras of the Department of Justice is, we stand by the victims. They haven't stand by the Epstein victims, the Trump victims, the Prince Andrew victims. Okay, if all is true, you got a lot of big people here, created a lot of victims. But you stand with the victims, you haven't for a second when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein and his criminal gang, his pedophilia gang. Mostly involving rich white men in suits. They're better than you because they're moralists. They have more money in the bank and they're moralist Christians. Even Donald Trump calls himself a moralist Christian who loves the Bible but can't cite a single passage of the Bible. Not even Leviticus, not even the hate parts that most politicized Christians love to retort with. They love the 2 men shall not lie down together in Leviticus. Now, they completely miss the next couple of sentences, and that's all on purpose, like, not wearing mixed clothing. Everybody wears polyester blends today. It's where a lot of clothing is made. You get rayon, cotton mixes, all that stuff. Nobody's claiming Leviticus, and nobody's claiming that somebody should get the death penalty for wearing the wrong blouse. It's idiotic. But the good moralist Christians, they're the ones that, like I said, since the 80s, they've been wagging their finger at us. We're the bad people. We're the ones that go to work every day. We're not the ones going to Jeffrey Epstein Isles and raping little girls. We're not the ones ending food stamps and ending Social Security, leaving people impoverished and hungry, creating more homeless than we have now. Like their whole mission this term, let's create as much misery for everybody, not us, because we're the good Christian moralists. Everybody else should suffer. This is like Mother Teresa on crack cocaine. And Mother Teresa was a scumbag, right? Go read the books. Read the book by the Indian professor and read Christopher Hitchens' book about her. Okay? This is a woman that literally believes other people should suffer while she stayed in a 5-star hotel in Italy. Okay? Same, again, this is all about religion again. Same orbit. You keep telling me that you're the pious, pure moralist and you know everything that's right and wrong in this universe. Meanwhile, you're the biggest goddamn scumbags pulling off shit that is, and frankly, at this point, the rabbit hole is so deep with the Epstein files. Even an old, jaded, retired cop is like blown away. I'm like, I met some complete scumbags in my life. You all take the cake, and your politicians, lawyers, bankers, diplomats, foreign dignitaries, royalty, and you're all complete criminal scumbags. Far worse than a lot of the people I was up against back in my day. Far worse than them. Like in some neighborhoods, go ahead and touch a woman. Go ahead and touch a child. They'll find your dead ass in a gutter later that night. There are rules on the street. I've explained that before. Okay? That's what makes these Epstein and the ilk circle of pedophiles, that's what makes these guys so dangerous. They don't even have rules from themselves other than covering each other's asses. There are no street rules with these guys. There's no decorum. There's no acumen. There's no rapport. There's fuck you. We're better than you. We're going to make your lives miserable because you create all the problems. Meanwhile, they're raping little girls. Yeah, we have no problem labeling anything more than 3 black men as a out of control street gang. You've got dozens to hundreds in a pedophile ring here. How is that not a street gang? We already know they've been operating like a street gang for 10 years. And then it's not just Megyn Kelly who's throwing out the Hail Mary passes today. Oh, it's okay if they're 12. Just don't fuck a 9-year-old. Megyn Kelly, use your Second Amendment remedy. Really, seriously, you're a sick bitch. Okay? Bovino there, the Himmler haircut Border Patrol guy. Well, if you release one of our detainees by court order, we're going back to Chicago and we're going to arrest 1,650 people. They only arrested 650 people last time, so he's going to up it by 1,000 because you're going to release one person from custody. His unit arrested. Okay. They're being released because they're U.S. citizens you wrongfully detained. They're being released because they were legal immigrants going to their judge-ordered hearing to finish their legal process to become citizens. That's why they got fucking released. The fucking Epstein dump happens. Oh my God, I'm going to go back to Chicago and I'm going to arrest 1,000 more than we did last time. To cover up a pedophile ring, you're going to arrest people who haven't committed any crimes. You're going to turn civil immigration issues into felonies. And in your vacuum stupidity sweep of nonsense, you're more than willing to arrest U.S. citizens as long as they're brown. That's how you're going to cover up the pedophilia ring that the sitting president of the United States, by all information on the table, probably involved in. And your way of covering that up is to say it's okay to have sex with 12-year-olds as long as they're not 9. And it's really the immigrants who are the rapists, and I'll arrest 1,000 more in Chicago, even though the people I'm arresting haven't done anything in many, many, many cases. Like arresting people at the courthouse. I thought it was absurd when San Francisco PD arrested a defense attorney in the courthouse trying to represent her client. Okay, the police department hid what they did to those 2 cops. But trust me, you arrest a defense attorney in the courthouse, you better have a goddamn good reason, like she just whipped out a knife and tried to stab somebody. Her talking to a citizen about the police's activity in the courthouse, that's not an arrestable offense. Not even close. I thought that was bad. But we're at a whole other level now. Whole other level. Okay. Now let me go through the 5 top points here. And I'm going to go through them very quickly because the big rocks are horrible, but remember, there's 1,000 little rocks in here that are also bad. Okay. Number one, Epstein's own emails written by Jeffrey Epstein say Trump knew, quote, knew about the girls, close quote, and spent hours with a victim. Okay. You can't hide from that. You cannot hide from that. When he was emailing, Epstein was emailing Maxwell in 2011, Epstein calls Trump the dog that hasn't barked. The victim, quote, spent hours at my house with him. 2011. (2015 and 2019 emails. Trump, quote, knew about the girls, close quote. Trump had to ask Maxwell to stop, whatever the fuck that meant. Epstein wrote to somebody else that he was going to reach out to Trump to help manage the political problem that the Epstein-Trump relationship was causing. Okay. Number two, the DOJ absolutely had the proof of serious money laundering and financial crimes that involved Epstein, Trump, and many other people, and they ignored it. And that goes back all the way back to 2007. The financial crimes charges evaporated with a shitty Ken Starr brokered deal in Florida. Okay. Dirty, more dirty as fuck. Oh my God, I can't believe how dirty this is. It just keeps going. Number three, confirmation that the big banks and the big money facilitated Epstein for years. This guy had everybody in New York City and every financier on the East Coast on speed dial. The banks fucking knew. Okay. The Treasury fucking knew. The Treasury knew. How did the Secret Service not know? If the Secret Service knew, how did not the FBI know? Bloomberg reporting Treasury/FinCEN records reviewed by the Senate Finance Committee found there was $1.5 billion in payments that Epstein had used for trafficking and, quote, dubious transactions indicative of money laundering. Okay. We're not talking 2 weeks ago. We knew that. We knew that years ago. All in the docs. Number four, the scale and the post-conviction normalization of Epstein by his elite network. Everybody helped recruit Epstein's reputation, or recover Epstein's reputation, rehabilitate it, maybe a better word. Woody Allen, Peter Thiel, Mark Zuckerberg, Reid Hoffman, all listed in articles. WAPO, Hill, AP, all reporting. Number five, evidence that the frontline investigators knew this was a ring and not a one-off. Again, this goes back to the very earliest periods of the Palm Beach original investigation. They knew this was a criminal conspiracy, not a one-off, not one person, not two people. This was literally a criminal organization. They knew it. The documents show they know it. Okay? The agreement, it's explicit language about not going after co-conspirators. Bingo! The cover-up and whitewash pattern around the federal attorney and the DOJ. The attorney, for whatever corrupt reasons, decided not to go after a ringleader in a pedophile criminal case, including sex trafficking and money laundering. And if you got money laundering, you probably have bank fraud, wire fraud, all the other associated charges. So he just threw all that down the drain, pretended it wasn't going on in the Southern District of Florida. And then the DOJ followed up with an internal investigation that basically just went, oh, he showed poor judgment. He's a bad man. We gave him a memo. Carry on. Nothing happened. Now, how bad this ilk is going against the American people is I spent a lot of time last night looking at recent polling data. We can't get like overnights that are not out yet. We have to go back a couple of weeks, but using that as a reference point, October 7th, Morris NPR PBS polling, 75% of Americans polled wanted the entire all-inclusive Epstein files released. 75% of Americans. When CBS WAPO did another polling, another survey, their numbers were closer to the mid 80s. Okay, so we're not even talking about a supermajority. We're talking well above the supermajority. In the CBS WAPO polling, you've got 4 out of 5 Americans saying release the entire Epstein file. Okay, what is Megyn Kelly saying today? It's okay to fuck little girls. Look how much cover Bill Maher has offered Trump and his street gang. Bill Maher has eaten several handfuls of shit out of that adult diaper. And apparently Bill Maher can't take Kid Rock's ball sack out of his mouth either. And there's a whole legion of celebrities that just went to the mat for Trump, and it just disgusted. Mika and Joe, fuck those two. Cenk and Anna. Anna had some incident with the homeless. Now she's a Trump supporter and wants to kill all the homeless. Fuck you two. Okay. Well, Cenk's a pugilist. He's not even relevant. He hasn't been relevant in 7-8 years. There's a list of people that are just, useless souls. So why are you still watching Bill Maher? Why are you still watching Mika and Joe? Whoever you are in their audiences, they're literally the rehabilitators for a pedophilia ring. According to the polling, Trump's handling of the files, the Epstein files, is his worst rated thing across the board. Okay. Quinnipiac poll, he only got a 17% approval for handling the files, and the Reuters ISOP poll showed the same thing, about 17%. A lot of people were describing about what happened. They're describing it as a cover up. SSRS CBS showed that 60% of the people polled thought the files will contain embarrassing or damaging info about Trump. About 2/3 think the same about Democrats. But what did the release show? Clinton ain't in there. Gore isn't in there. Did you really think Barry, the choir boy, is in there? That boy got through 4 fucking years as a president without a scratch on him. And they hated him for one reason. He wasn't white. And he still made it out clean. You thought Barry was on the list? No. Why? Because Barry's married to Michelle, a strong black woman. She'd snap him in two if it was even rumored. So I never thought Barry was involved. Not for a second. Okay. But we proved that, no, there's no relations to the Clintons. There's no relation to Gore. So you can go ahead. 2/3 of you dummies can think it's all about the Democrats. It's not. 80% thinks it involves billionaires, and that's why it's not being released. It's bigger than political. It's wealth. Okay. Only 15% of Americans accept Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide. Literally, I don't know, because I don't have, all I see is snippets on social media and the news, and I haven't seen the casework. And yeah, I know about the glitch in the cameras at midnight. If the systems are that old, that's some old shit. And that's negligence on the Bureau of Prisons part. But I don't know what happened with him. But this document data at least puts back on the table as a possibility that, yeah, they whacked him. Okay. I would put equal money on him offing himself, because, he's going to be stuck in a cell, and only go out to the mess hall with a bunch of men. And he's a, predator. So he wants to be around little girls. I would put equal money that he killed himself, or equal money somebody whacked him at this point. Just completely changing where I was a couple of weeks ago. Just had no data. Couldn't say whether he whacked himself or not a few weeks ago. But this shit, there's too many wealthy people involved. And he's the linchpin. He is the blackmailer. Remember, Ludick said that. Lutnick in the podcast said that. He was the blackmailer, the biggest blackmailer everybody knew about. Like some of the focus groups, some of the comments are kind of like self-defense comment by the Red Hat Rubes. Man, this is all sketchy as hell. Why won't they just release it? Thinking again, it will show Clinton as the predator, not Trump. Ah! Well, that blew up in your face. And remember, I'm not defending Clinton. I've never liked Clinton. Never liked Trump either, but I have to say, I literally loathed Trump since the 80s. I just dislike Clinton. I didn't. Some of his policies were okay, but I don't think he's a good person. Um, and it's funny, the QAnon adjacent fucking metal cases, they keep flip. I think Sarah Longfeld said something about that in Bill Work. I think it was her, maybe been somebody else, but they were talking about focus groups and they're going like, these fucking MAGAs that still QAnon adjacent, these fuckers are all over the place. They don't know which direction is up, down, left, sideways. They don't have any idea. Okay, because they bounce literally back and forth, pole to pole, from burn it all down. They don't care who's on the list. If it's Trump, hang him too. If it's Trump, Clinton, Hillary, Bill Gates, Andrew, a banker, a lawyer, they don't care. They're just saying, fine rope. They don't give a shit. Burn it all down. And then, because they're all in it. And then they switch back to, no, don't release anything because it's all fake and it's all just to blame Trump for what somebody else did. So, as usual, they don't know what the hell they're doing, what the hell they can't think for themselves, obviously. And they're just, the focus groups on the book, they're just all over the place. Literally don't know where they are day to day. That's got to be a weird place to be. I wake up in the morning, I still remember who I was yesterday. I don't think that's true with a lot of the Red Hat rubes. But now the core of the polling, and this is where it's kind of in the normal distribution, the big answer, that answer that's becoming the prominent answer, is just release it. Everybody's sick and tired of the finger pointing. Everybody's sick and tired of the argument, the screaming, the bitching, the bad self-defense, the cover-up. And everybody's like, and this is across the board, just release the fucking thing and we'll sort it out. And I think that's what we need to do. Because as it stands right now, 7 out of 10 Americans believe there's something in the Epstein file that shows massive criminal activity amongst the elites. Okay, that's 7 out of 10 Americans. The other 3 are lawyers. It's like the old Trident commercials. 4 out of 5 dentists recommend Trident. Who's the other asshole that doesn't? It's sugar-free gum. I like gum. I like chewing gum. I always have. And I only chew Trident because it's sugarless. I don't want to hurt my teeth, but I do like mint gum. It's like, who's the 5th dentist? Now, can you imagine the 3 people are going, no, there's nothing to the Epstein files, especially after this dump. Again, these pollings and these focus groups were a couple of weeks ago. And I do have a couple of bot triggers set that's going to notify me when the pollings change, new information pops up, and of course, I'll jump on or write up notes or essays, giving you all the updates. If there's any aspects or any topics you guys want to talk about, go ahead and put it in the chat message, and if I have some thoughts, we'll break some downs here. Now, the most dangerous thing here is the real red hat rubes, including a lot of the upper echelon who's politically, financially, socially either at that level or adjacent to Trump, the Palm Beach crowd. Trump can do no wrong because they've literally replaced Jesus Christ of Nazareth with Donald Trump of Palm Beach. That's how much good moralist Christians they are. So you're not going to convert those people. They're going to go down to the mat with this guy. The problem is 3/4 to 80% of the rest of the country is going, fuck that. We've had enough of this. And there's even, what was interesting in the polling is some of the people they refer to as the soft R's, sort of the center rights that aren't MAGA, but still Republican. They're now worried that This is not just getting buried, but evidence is being destroyed. So they're worried about if there is the criminal enterprise that is suspected by many, then it should be either proved or disproved. Buried and swept underneath the carpet, that's not what they want. Okay, so at least the center right is aligning with sanity. And that's actually really good news. Okay, because the best way out of this fantasy cult land of MAGA is self-deprogramming. That's the best option. Okay, even some of the Moonies figured it out. Scientologists figure it out. They realize we're in a cult, and they process it. Mormons are figuring it out. Catholics are figuring it out. The deconversion channels, that was a rabbit hole of mine for a while on YouTube, is so many people from so many different religions, just completely deprogramming and becoming non-religious. That is the psychological process that I'm speaking to here. Is the Red Hat Rube has to go, wait a minute, I'm the fish. I'm the one with the hook in the mouth. I swallowed the hook, the line, and the sinker. What the hell did I do? And there's even deprogramming groups out there now, which I think is super good. Okay? The best way to get a gang member to stop being a gang member isn't a cop talking to him, and not even a pastor. It's an ex-gang member, usually an ex-con that served time and didn't like it. Prison sucks. It's not a vacation. Okay? Unless you're Ghislaine Maxwell being protected by Donald Trump and Todd Blanche and Pam Bondi. She's getting custom cooked meals now. Did you guys read that? Yeah. She should be in a near max facility. Like the lowest she should go is strict medium in the federal prison system. She's at Club Fed, getting custom meals delivered to her cell. She has a stress puppy. The warden is helping her with her commutation paperwork. Yes, Trump is considering pardoning her, like that's going to cover up this shit. Now, what politically destroys the Republican, and this is something Mike Grinder Johnson is blind to, Senator Thune in the Senate completely blind to, is this data dump. My prediction of this data dump, given the polls just 2 weeks ago, this data dump is where MAGA loses every independent, whether they're conservative or not. Independents are just going to simply walk. Power to the independent people. Love it. Love it. Because they already didn't like. Independents were the big ones that were saying, hey, this is all bullshit. This is just the left-right orthodoxy arguing. Release the damn thing, sort it out. This is why we have cops, lawyers, and judges. Okay? No one's above the law. We already did this during fucking Watergate. Nobody is above the law. Trump is not above the fucking law. Fuck Justice Roberts. Chief Justice Roberts. Oh, yeah, he can do anything because he's a gang leader, and I'm beholden to him. Okay, what do they have on you, Chief Justice Roberts? Because this whole thing, remember, is based on blackmail. What shit do they have on you to give a pedophile, criminal, an adjudicated rapist, a convicted business fraud, and you give him the power to commit more crime when he was involved in probably one of the most disgusting criminal organizations of recent memory? Now, where this also screws both parties, both establishment sides of both parties. If you're considered one of the elites of the party, you went to an Ivy League university, you're a big lawyer, you've already made big money, and now you're in the Senate or in the House to save all us plebs, none of that's going to fucking play. Even with all the problems with that guy Planter in Maine, the guy with the tattoo he had to cover up, and he's sort of a communist online, but I guess he had a bad tattoo with some Nazi symbolism when he was in the Marines, and he's all over the place on a couple of issues. Yeah, Yeah, he was a kind of a train wreck 10 days ago. He's looking like freaking gold right now to voters. Okay. Anybody establishment, anybody who is considered upper crust, all this stuff is going to stick to them. And it's going to stick to them for a long time. A long time. They were already losing public opinion weeks ago. This will bury them. Any independent support the Republicans thought they had, whether in Congress or in the White House, is gone. It's just evaporated. And who else this screws? And you're going to see possibly some major policy changes over this. The whole veneer of this special anointed billionaire class, that's gone. That just died. That died 10 minutes after the first article was published with this shit in it. You the goody good two shoes billionaires? No, you're the scumbags. You want to point your finger at the poor and say, oh, the poors are all the problem. No, we know who the problem is because we just got the documentation. You're the fucking problem. The poors aren't doing what you're claiming they're doing. You're making that shit up. Why? To cover up the shit you're doing. So I can't wait a week, 14 days out when the next round of focus groups and polling drop, because it's going to be ugly. It's going to be just as ugly for Schumer and Jeffries as it is for Thune and Josh Hawley and Marsha Blackburn and Donald Trump. All these unelected politicos that circle around the billionaires and they're the little sycophants who praise the king. You're going to have no standing in a matter of weeks. Because you think if this stops here, no. Okay, the victims were at Congress when Grijalva got sworn in and she made her first speech on the floor as being a new House member. And Grijalva, just like her dad, went to town. Wade laid waste to Trump and his ilk. Okay, with the Epstein victims sitting in the observation deck cheering her on. If you think it's going to stop at this release and the criticism, they just get to write this off because Megyn Kelly gave him permission to fuck a 12-year-old. It's not how life works. Okay, we're going to have a political change. That is certain now. Start thinking about the post-Trumpian era. There's a lot of work to do. Okay, just like there was a lot of work to do after Watergate, there's a lot of work to happen now. Okay, and it will start very, very, very soon. Because the age of Trumpianism, the age of the right wing, the far right wing controlling as a nationalist spectacle, that just died. Okay. The heart hasn't completely stopped beating yet. Not all the electrolytes have left the body. So occasionally you get a little blip on the EKG. That's the weirdest thing in the emergency room with like gunshot victims and accident victims. Is the doctor will declare him dead, and you're sitting there doing your paperwork, waiting for the coroner to show up, and all of a sudden the EKG goes, like, oh! Nurse had to explain what was going on the first time I saw it. Kind of freaked me out. Yeah, I'm not saying I'm saying the body's still warm. It's not cold yet. You haven't put it in the freezer, but that's where it's heading. Okay. And a lot of people who hung their entire lives on this whole shit show that is dear leader porn star humper, Elon Musk, whole cabal of billionaires and lawyers and politicos, they're the core to our problems. Now, do other people cause problems? Yeah, but not at the scale these assholes are causing. Okay. The true threat to the stability of the United States of America and our democratic republic is not the poors. It's not immigrants. It's the corrupt politicos. Not just the politicians, but the orbit of politicians, the politicos. It's many of the billionaires, totally corrupt. Corrupt, greedy, angry, mean, and they want their angst taken out on your ass. Meanwhile, look at the shit they're doing. So we're going to have a political change. We may have a religiosity change, and we may see because you're even starting to see this with the MTG style MAGAs. They're starting to stay like far leftists. They're starting to claim that billionaires should be illegal, which we can get into that in another video. That just at face value is stupid. You're mad because we didn't tax them for 40 years. That's what you're mad about. You're not mad because they're wealthy. You're mad because they got away scot-free. You wouldn't give a shit how much money Mark Zuckerberg had if he was paying 18% a year. Because he would be funding your roads, your schools, he would be paying down the debt, all the other things we want to see in a strong market economy with a good tax policy. Okay. But everybody, including the left-wing authoritarian Elizabeth Warren, Senator Warren, wants to start stealing people's fixed assets because they're mad about the tax code giveaways they've been handing out for 40 years. Not under capitalism, I'll repeat that, under corporate socialism. So we're going to see a political change. That's going to require a lot of cleaning up. We got a lot of vacuuming, a lot of spackling the walls, repainting, a lot of things in government and society to fix because of this. We're going to have a political change. We're going to have an economic class change. We're not going to look at billionaires ever the same again. Okay? You aren't the leaders that you claim you are. You're definitely not the moralists you claim. You are literally some of the most greedy, wild, don't give a fuck about society or planet Earth people you would ever meet. Okay. We're going to see a religious change. Are you really going to believe the Vickers bullshit after this? Like, what should happen right now? You know, the $100,000 question for reporters right now is every time they walk up to Joel Osteen, that scumbag Franklin Graham, any of these preachers, any of these Christian priestesses that hang around Trump. So why are so many religious readers backers of the largest pedophile ring run by billionaires that the country has ever seen? Why is the religious leadership, especially of the evangelicals, 100% behind this pedophile ring? Why aren't they asking this question? But one reporter asked a serious question to Livet, the Christian nationalist spokesperson, little Nazi princess. Why did Trump spend so much time with the victim? Why did he spend hours with the victim? That's in the emails. Will you explain that? She turned around and walked out of the press room. That's why they fired all the normal outlets and put in the people they thought they could manage. Now the press pool they hand selected of dingbats, podcaster, influence, and Nazi fucking tards. Oh, I'm a knit cap. I'm Einstein. Fuck off. Okay? You're a retarded cockroach. That's what you are. Okay? He's sitting in the fucking press room thinking he's Walter Cronkite or Hugh Downs. Give me a fucking break. Okay? You're a little toadstool boy given a job as a propagandist and paid by the SVR in Russia. Shut the fuck up. But even with that crew, they can't contain the questions. The question was launched yesterday. What the fuck was Trump doing for hours with one of the victims in the Epstein files? Okay, those questions are not going to stop, even from within their handpicked pool. And when you add this to all the other shit they're doing, government shutdown, killing fishermen and claiming it's a fentanyl war. They don't make fentanyl in Venezuela. That's Mexico, you idiots. Okay, we're about to change. So again, think about what the post-Trump era is going to look like, what you can do to support good change in your community, all the way up to Washington, D.C. And I'm going to say it again. I'm going to say it again. And I'm going to say it again. Be independent. Vote independent. Run for local office as an independent. Let's break the left-right orthodoxy. Okay? Because the Democrats surrendering in the shutdown, they're part of the problem too. Okay, sure, we got a hell of a lot bigger problem with Trump and Epstein and the gigantic pedophile ring of billionaires and politicos. That's a much bigger problem. I get that. But we still have a problem here across the board. So vote independent, be independent, run for local office as an independent. Okay? And when I dig more into the stuff, I'll give you some more information. Until next time, unfortunately, even if it's an ugly subject like Epstein, Trump, and their ilk, we have to think about it. We have to think what to do after this all settles down and what the aftermath to the future of America is going to look like. Think about it. Peace out.